Good evening and welcome to the Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast. You are now witnessing, if it's live, in person, me, without my partner Deary tonight. He is unavailable. He is doing well, though. He's got the COVID vaccine and he's going to be on the right path. It just sometimes there's a little bit of a side effect that can delay the excitement and maybe bring you down. So he's going to be fine. He'll be back next week. Don't worry. Tonight is just me, MJ Govier, and my guest tonight who, he's known. He's a guy who's been around. He's got a lot of experience and knowledge and wisdom. I really have been looking forward to this episode. I know I say this a lot, and people might say, oh, you say this all the time, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, I really was grateful when he first reached out, and he's like, hey, I like what you're doing. Maybe we should do something together. And I said, well, that would be great. I'd love to have you come on the show. So here it is. That moment has now arrived, and he is with us. He is a many time winner of NFBC leagues, big money leagues. He's also won Tout Wars. He's got a ton of experience, and there's no doubt about it that when it comes to fantasy knowledge, this is probably one of the main guys you'd like to ask about and be like, hey, I got to get this guy's opinion because he knows what he's talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, it is my distinct pleasure to bring you in one of the most drawn out and way too long intros in recent history, VLAD SEDLER. Welcome to the show, Vlad. How you doing?
Hey, thank you so much, Michael. It's great to be on here on a Friday night. Honestly, I really couldn't think of a better way to spend it than to spend it with you, meeting you here for the first time.
That's so sweet. What a sweet man you are, Vlad. Yeah, I am thrilled that you're here. We're going to talk about fantasy baseball, of course. This is not a fantasy football show. It's not a fantasy basketball show. We're going to talk turkey between the diamond, the 9 players that matter most to you on your squad. We're going to break down some catching tiers, a little bit of ADP talk. Vlad's going to take us through some things he's been working on, and we'll have some fun with Enrico's Inquisition, and we're going to do a couple segments. In honor of Vlad, I put together something dumb for later in the show, so I hope that you enjoy it, Vlad. It's really stupid.
I like dumb on occasion, especially on the weekend. So let's do it.
Perfect. Well, you're on the right show for that, Vlad. That is no doubt about it. Don't forget, Palazzo Podcast at protonmail.com is where you can send emails if you hear anything today and you want to ask a question about it for me or Vlad. I'll refer it to him. I'll forward it ahead to him if it doesn't get mentioned today. For those of you that are live, you can ask us a question in the comment section, and we'll try to address them within reason, of course. And on Twitter, you can follow the show, Palazzo Podcast. 2 L's, 2 Z's.
Utah, give me 2.
Don't forget it, and that's it. So, Vlad, before we get rolling here, I want to ask you one thing. What is one thing that I or the audience or the community here should know about you that has nothing to do with baseball whatsoever?
Man, I mean, I've been around the industry for I don't know, probably a decade or so, and I'm pretty open about everything. So I think a lot of people know me as far as my strategy and everything fantasy baseball related, and even my life. I'm pretty open book, but everybody knows that I'm Russian, of Russian descent. I came over here when I was 2 months old. But one thing that people may not know is that I was born in Rome, Italy, on the way. So my mom was, 20 years old. My dad was 23, recently, basically leaving, communism, leaving the Soviet Union. We already had some grandparents out here and some family members in Los Angeles. And they just got on a plane, left their lives there, and came to America with me, the Bambino, on the way. And so, from Italy to LA.
We've made a change in your honor, by the way, to the show. Usually we play the Kill Bill siren whenever somebody mentions a short sample size in the 2020 season because it was short. I don't know if you heard. We've got sick of it. It's become a cliche. But in honor of you, I've renamed it and changed it. And here is the new short sample size sounder. There you go.
Works for me.
That's from NHL 94. That is the exact siren from NHL 94 for those of you that don't know. So I listened to your pod with Rob DiPietro on the Pole Hitter Pod, and I really enjoyed it. And I got so excited because I love 90s hockey, man. It really takes me back. It was the biggest time in my life to be a hockey fan, especially since the Red Wings were on the brink and they finally won in 97, and I grew up and am a Detroiter. So, man, those are great memories.
It was a good time. I remember it was, I obviously on Rob's pod, I talked about the Burry stories and some of his issues with his arch rival Sergei Fedorov, and I think they both dated for long periods of time. Tennis star Anna Kournikova at the time, but one of our I just remember there was this one story where Fedorov, like, basically, hopefully he's not listening to the show, but just Burry talking about what a dick he was, that basically they were at some Russian restaurant with his parents. Like, he needed to go, but his parents were like still in the middle of eating, and he basically like made them get up and be like, let's go. It's time to go. Like, I'm done, so you're done. So that was pretty dick. So after that, I was like anti-Fedorov for a while.
Damn. I had a jersey. The only jersey I had growing up, it was a Fedorov jersey, and everybody wanted Stevie Y. That was, I love Stevie Y. He's the king. But I had a Fedorov jersey. That was kind of a rebellious move at the time. Controversial, that it was. But I survived. Anyways, Rob's here, by the way. Rob's saying hello. Hey, Rob. Good to see you, bud. Thanks for joining in on the live stream. Those of you who are listening, yeah, Rob. Hey, Rob is great. Rob's a big up-and-comer. You had a very, 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 very nice compliment for him when you joined his show. And I got to say, man, that was really cool of you. And Rob deserves all the credit he's getting right now.
That was a really fun show. Like, a good podcast, a good live stream. I like, first of all, the looking at the person, the sort of the physical interaction, not too physical, of course. And we are separated by, the ether. But you just kind of vibe. And when you get lost in a discussion or, things just kind of flow freely, it just makes it a lot better. And so that whatever hour 15 or whatever we had just flew by and had a good time. And yes, I liked Rob before, but now I like him even more. Big fan.
We love you, Rob. Nate Markham says, as a Blues fan, I hate Stevie Y. Yeah, well, it's understandable, Nate. Sorry about that. That was double overtime slapper, 1-0 shutout game 7 victory in 1996 playoffs. Very cool. I loved it. Not so good for Nate. Anyway, this is not a hockey podcast, believe it or not. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been participating with the show. Vlad, is there anything you want to mention off the top about your coming articles or things to look for on other appearances that people should know about? You deserve to be pumped up.
I just obviously I'm partial because it's my work, but I really think people should fork over $39.99 for the season for fantasyguru.com, just because I help people win at fantasy baseball. And Ray Flowers is also in the mix. Not only in the mix, he's pretty much the lead dog of our show, and he's been doing it for 15 years plus. And him and I are different in terms of our approach, and he's been doing it a lot longer than me. But the difference is he pumps out articles like a machine, just like a straight up content machine, and quality stuff. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like typing with 2 fingers almost. I'm changing sentences around. Like, it takes me a couple days to write something, but different approaches, different types of feels. A lot of the stuff I put out there is very NFBC centric, but not also just like, rankings and tier lists, but draft strategy, game theory, things to help you win. And then in season, the fab help, free agent bidding.
Yeah, I think that's pretty valuable. $39.99, not a bad deal. And Vlad does know his stuff. The proof's in the pudding. If you don't know about Vlad and his research and his efforts and his victories, many time champion of big times leagues. And what is the biggest win of your career? I actually don't know that.
What is the biggest win? I've won the main event, my leagues a few times. Again, that's, the bigger wins have come from DFS, just because, in one day, just everything hits and you get lucky. With Rob Silver and I came in second in the Platinum NFBC. It's a standalone 15-teamer. It's a $15,000 entry, so I kind of worked my way up to getting into that thing, and sitting around that table with like the best of the best. Like we selected pick 14, and the way it works with that bid is you're spending fab dollars to get your KDS draft slot. So if you really want one, it will cost you like a chunk of your fab bid. So I think
your budget. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So like the one went for like, $250 or something like that. Good thing for Rob and I at the time, we didn't want the 1 pick. We liked the 14. There was like, at the times, like Chris Bryant and, Freeman and some other guys that we liked.
Chris Bryant must have been a long time ago.
It was ages ago. And Casey Chaw was sitting there to the right of us at 15. We didn't want to spend a penny on fab either, and he was 15. And we were just sniping each other, just like, back and forth. And we did it 2 years in a row. The following year, I think we were 15 and he was 14. And the sniping was, was going back and forth as well.
Wow, that's cool, man. That sounds like a lot of fun. I wonder how you would set the market on that when the first one of those leagues went off, the market wouldn't be clear on what you would pay from your FOB budget to get that top pick. That's strange.
Yeah, and whenever, both years that we did it, and there was no platinum in 2020 with the shortened season and sample size.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Heard about that. Oh, look at me. Poor producing. There we go. Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, it was basically the same amounts were being spent, like almost in the same range. It's like 250 to 300 for the number one pick and kind of all the way down the line. And I think, spent almost nothing for the 14.
Weird, man. That's cool. I can't wait to be involved in the super big money league. Just as soon as I win some big ones and build up that bankroll. I got a lot of experience, just not a lot of experience in like $1,000 entries, 4 or 5 figure crazy things like that. So I will get there though. I will get there. Oh yes. Like Wayne's World, it will be mine.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation with some friends earlier about just the difference in the ADP between the NFBC draft champions, the 150 and the 400. So both the 150 entry and the 400 entry, those leagues, they still go towards the overall prize. They all go in the same pool, but the players or how people are drafting in the 400 is almost like a different animal. So
there's a noticeable difference on player ADPs.
Yeah, and I haven't done any 400s yet. I don't think I'm going to. I'm just kind of sticking in with a few of the 150s. But I mean, it's pretty crazy. I would love to see the difference between what those picks are, or maybe be a fly on the wall in one of those 400s and see what they're doing over there.
I've always wanted to be a fly on the wall. I never had that experience, and I'm afraid I never will. One time though, this is the closest I ever got. I was downstairs talking to some friends. And it was a reverse fly on the wall. A girl who I was talking about and defending to the people was the fly on the wall in the stairwell around the corner. And she heard everything I said about her. She loved it so much that she totally made out with me later. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
It was a great night. And I felt good because I was defending someone genuinely. And that's character, guys. Yeah. That's what true character is. When people aren't listening, what are you really saying? Anywho, Christ, wow, the time's flying by already. We got to get this ball moving. I want to give a shout out to our crew who's been doing a great job. This is where we cue the Belvedere music, do a little housekeeping. By the way, Vlad, is Mr. Belvedere a housekeeper or a butler?
It's kind of a mix. It's both, right? Because he does take care of the house, he does everything, but he also answers the door and does whatever butlery things butlers do.
That's how I see it. I see him as a housekeeper, and there's no reason a housekeeper has to be a woman, and I feel like there's a lot of people stereotyping with that. A housekeeper is someone who cleans your house and takes care of the business, okay? So butlers are for rich people, and the people on the... God, I can't remember the family name of the Mr. Belvedere crew, but they weren't rich. They were like a middle-class family.
Yes, and Bob Euchre, obviously, that actually knew him from Mr. Belvedere before I knew that he was the Brewers announcer.
Right. Oh, me too. I didn't know that either. And Mike Curlin's having a laugh watching you try to answer that question. So.
You know what else is? I actually have a small Mr. Belvedere story. It was the first, I think, and only live studio appearance that I was in. I mean, not me in the show, but
you're in the audience.
Friend of the family. Yes, I was in the studio audience for an episode, like friends of the Wesley, the youngest brother, Bryce Beckham. So I got we're like the same age, but I still got like an autographed copy of him. I was a kid actor also at the time. And went to that taping of the episode and got to see Mr. Belvedere up close.
Dude, see, this is the best story we've had around the housekeeping so far. Wow, that's amazing, man. I've always wondered who's in those studio audiences. This show taped before a live studio audience,
Yeah, I mean, that's your 90s basically. Like, people would go to tapings of Friends and everything, or line up around the corner of the CBS or Fox studios, going and watch those shows. I don't know how easy that is these days with COVID, but it's a different world.
It's usually like tourist people coming into town and kind of passing through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. Anywho, shout out to some of the people that I've gotten to know recently through the show. Shrimp Boat Captain. He's part of the Listener League for Draft Champions podcast run by Zach Waxman. I got to know him a bit. He really is a shrimp boat captain. Shout out to you, sir. I love those jerk chicken recipes. Shout out to Joey Ricotta. I'm going to be on his show soon. I appreciate it. Shout out to Sam. Sam on Twitter. Sam FBB. He is a great dude, and we've been dalliancing for a while. Haven't quite had the chance to connect and talk, but we're finally going to do it this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. He's a really honest person. And to RotoTricks. RotoTricks is a podcast. They reached out, and they wanted to have me on the show. So I said, yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to be on RotoTricks, which is a fantasy baseball pod that is it's a British fantasy baseball pod. So I'm really excited for that. That's going to be
exciting.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you won't throw on an accent of any sort, right? Because that might be offensive.
I think it's a dick move. Yeah. I mean, people think you can just do that freely with the British, but it's kind of, if they were right in front of me, I'd be like, oh, this, unless I could really do a really great one. And I was in a play when I was younger in high school. It was Sherlock Holmes, and I was a paper boy, one of those like paper boys on the corner. And I had to announce things in a British accent. It was not very good. Although I did say Thames, Thames, not to be confused with Marcus Thames or Eric Thames. So Eric Thames. Is it Eric Thames or Eric?
He's Thames. He's Thames. He's not like the river. Yeah.
All right, Marcus Thames, Eric Thames. Okay, good to know. All right, there we go. Thank you, everybody. Really love connecting with all the great people that have been kind to me. Shout out also Keith Farnsworth. That was really cool of him to take a moment to say hello. And it's really cool. I can't wait to get into more fantasy baseball questions and answering, and people have already been hitting me up. I had a question about, would you rather have Wander Franco or Jeter Downs in 2021? I'm like, oh, that's a great question, because I think that's I think it's a reasonable comp. What do you think of that? For 2021, I mean, they're both long shots, right?
For the most part, I mean, I'm drafting a little bit of Wander Franco just in case, just because you never know. He's still so young; he hasn't really even hit above A ball, and even though he could be ready, it might be unwise of them to bring him up right away, even if he is. Yeah, I mean, worth a stab. He's going around 250, 300 ADP, and if there are any good rumors or anything whatsoever that people can grasp on in the press, he's gonna go up even further.
All right, but Jeter Downs, I feel like they're kind of on the similar path here. Like, they're not that far away. So maybe it's more of a stretch than I think it was. I thought it was a good question because Jeter Downs is on a team where they're not winning anything necessarily right now either, and he could make an impact if he's given the opportunity.
He's more likely, I think, to actually come up and make an impact. But I think over the course of their careers, it's Wander Franco is going to be an all-star. Maybe it's Franco. Oh
yeah.
I don't know.
Career-wise, Franco.
Maybe. I don't know. It was Julio Franco.
Should have it. Well, I loved Julio.
Yeah.
You believe that? I remember he hit 341 in 1991. That was awesome. I used to play sports talk baseball, and I loved playing with him. And they had his real batting stats in that game.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty sweet. Yeah. That was one of the first games ever with broadcasting. It was Jack Buck. Good old Jack Buck.
Cool.
Yeah, isn't this fun? Have we talked about anything relevant yet? No. How about we do that? Okay. Let's get the ball rolling and move into a segment that we usually call Leading Off. So, on leading off today, we're going to take a look at some things that Vlad's been working on. And I'm really excited about it because I got a little bit of inside access to learn from him and see how his mind works. Not completely, but just a little bit. So you're working on something about catcher tiers, right? So why don't you open the dialogue on this and explain where we'll go with this segment?
So it's a series. Actually, very untraditionally, I did not start with catchers. I started with corner infielders. So that article came out last week, and with DHs and middle infielders after that, and then catchers. Just kind of inserted them in the middle there, just to kind of throw things off. But
and this is included with the sub $39.99, right?
That's right. And there, it's a series on tiers, and obviously most people understand and know, those who have been playing fantasy baseball for a while, that you don't just draft straight off of the rankings list. That understanding, basically grouping players together based on their either projections that you use, projections you create, or just having some where their fantasy value comes out. Similarly, you want to kind of group these guys together, and then as you're drafting, you're doing these draft champions or mocks or whatever you do, you have an idea where these players are falling, so that you're not overpaying for players, and that you're able to grab the deals that you can. And so basically have a little tiering system with each position. And with the catchers, what I did was I listed their ADP over the last couple of weeks, and then my VDP, Vlad's draft position, Vlad's draft predictions, whatever you want to call it. and really to see what the delta is, see where, where the big differences are. And obviously the guys that are way lower on the VDP are guys that I'm not necessarily going to end up with on a lot of my teams. A lot can change between now and March, when, theoretically I would be going to Vegas. I don't know if I'm going this year, but when we would go to Vegas, we would draft our live events, hundreds of us friends getting together and drafting out there. A bunch of people do the same thing in New York the week before. But like, for example, Salvador Perez is, to me, been a solid producer when he's healthy. Last year, in that short sample in 2020, he raked and hit a bunch of homers. He was their big power guy, and for whatever reason, he's popping in around 80-85 on NFBC's ADP. And for me, just when I'm breaking down all the positions and tiering players, like, that's just not a spot that I'm particularly interested in, because to me, the 2020 is overvaluing his price tag. And for me, he's more like a guy in the 120, 130 range. And even then, I don't know if I would take, a Salvador Perez there. But then you sort of get more, cast the wider net, and you look at the position as a whole. And when you break it down through, 8 or 9 tiers and seeing where guys fall, you may end up noticing that there are guys that you really like later on, where you don't want to give up that draft capital of an 85 or a 100 ADP for a catcher. You may want to take it someone else. Everyone else has, everyone's got their different theories and their ideas about it. But for me, it's just something that has worked over the years, that I've been successful at, is really not spending up for catcher early. There, of course, are exceptions. Sometimes, value falls and you just got to kind of jump on it. I had a Real Muto share last year. I'm not a big, Real Muto guy, particularly. He's a great player. Actually, it's really funny. Anytime I say something about catchers or, whatever, like, people are like, oh, yeah, you're starting a war with Toby, with Baffling Crazy. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I have the utmost respect. Not only do I have the utmost respect for Toby, I was like one of his first fans, you know what I mean? Like, I recognize we played in a main event league together. He won that league in his first year playing. I'm like, this guy, you watch his draft, you're like, this guy is really good. He really knows what he's doing. And that's really the beauty of fantasy baseball, is there's so many different paths and ways to go. Just because I like catchers late, he likes early, doesn't mean we can't both meet and end up first and second place in the league, which is exactly what happened in the 2 main events we were in together. I was first in one, he was second in the other. I was first, and then vice versa. So we met at the top of the standings with different pathways.
Man, that is fascinating. I got to tell you, it gets complicated, Vlad. There are so many ways to win, like you said, that as a listener or somebody who's trying to get more involved or take a piece of advice from someone like yourself or Toby, 2 very smart people, no doubt about it. You guys are both in the know. In fact, that's worth a...
Utah, give me 2.
Yeah, you guys are both excellent. I understand there are many ways to win, but how are we supposed to know what's right? Is it just what works for us? Or do you ever veer from your own strategy and say, I'm going to try this year, and it worked, and then you stuck with it?
It's not like I'll try this year. It's by the time the end of March comes around and my most important drafts are happening, I already am really confident in what I'm going to be doing. Like, I know when I'm walking into that room in Vegas, like what my KDS, what my draft spot is, and what my plan of attack is, like pretty much who I'm going to get. And if I don't get those guys, these are my backup plans. And, even if it doesn't work out, even my first or second or third choices aren't there, I'm kind of ready for all, different pathways. What I do up until then, why I start drafting in January, is I'm figuring out what's most comfortable for me in those March drafts. I'm doing, draft champions leagues from the middle of 7 or 8 pick. I'm doing from the 1, from the 15, getting an idea for what I feel comfortable with and where I want to draft at. Like, are there, certain players I want to make sure that I have on my team later on, like after 150 ADP, it's more of the Wild West, right? Like, players are jumping ADP very heavily. You can you don't want to base your draft on who you're going to get later, because there are a lot of those guys and that'll work out. But you have to almost set your draft spot and figure out where you want to draft from if you want to get certain guys. Like, if you really want the 15 pick or the 1 pick, you're not starting a draft with Trey Turner. or Shane Bieber, most likely, because those guys are going in the middle of the draft. And so
Right.
you want to figure out not just like who your favorite first and second round pick, but what your favorite set of, 4 or 5 guys, your base on your team, what is ideal for you in order to kind of, take it from there, basically.
Huh. So what do a guy like Dalton Varsho? People reach for him, or do you think he's properly valued?
Dalton Varsho is a little overvalued to me because what I'm reading is that he may not even start with the team on opening day. So he's not going to catch either, which is great. I mean, you have an outfielder who is basically catcher eligible, and among catchers, he's probably going to lead the position even in 120 games. He'll probably lead the position in stolen bases. So there's some value.
It's like Kiner Khalifa was when he had the catcher eligibility.
Yeah, that was great. Almost like he's Kiner Khalifa is like just a guy, but Varsho could be a stud. I mean, he could be pretty solid. So I don't really have many shares right now. 150-ish ADP is okay. It's okay. It's not really for me.
Okay. Oh boy, Gary Sanchez. I got to ask you about him real quick since we're talking catcher tiers. You have no interest then, or would that be a guy that you would snag? Maybe if he kept falling to you post 200.
So if you really, really like to destroy your batting average and do damage to it irreparably, whatever that word is. Sorry, it's like my first beer in a month, by the way.
Hey,
for the show, yeah, I'm having for the show tonight. I honestly, I don't drink much.
Hey, I don't drink either. I never drink. So, but kudos to you. You deserve it, man. You're working your ass off.
And that's the irony of it. I thought about it right before I started. I'm like, damn, I cracked the beer open on the show, and sorry. But
no. I mean, I do technically drink. I just don't drink. That's not an issue for me. But I do appreciate the consideration.
Thank you. Gary Sanchez, yeah. I mean, there's already going to be so much risk that we're going to take along the way with our drafts as is. That, and then especially later on, like at some point, you're gonna be like, oh, I really want power. Let me grab Adam Duvall, and his, 230. And they're going to be guys along the way. They're going to continuously drag you down. So the earlier you start that sort of downward spiral, the more trouble you can be in. Like, are you really that, hurting in power at that point that, that you really need to draft a Gary Sanchez, because the batting average depression is real. I mean, it could be, 200, 220. And for the number of plate appearances he's going to have, could really take a drag. Could he hit 35 homers? Yeah, sure. It's possible, but I mean, pitchers don't even like to work with him, right? I mean, they like Higgy. They like Higgy. Higgy shit.
Yeah. Fine. All right. I guess I just got to move on, man. I'm living in the past. Gary Sanchez served me so well when he came up, and I can't believe he hit 278 in a season once. And that wasn't in a small sample size either. That was like legit.
Well, here's the thing. Anything can happen, right? I mean, like, I'm not here to say that it's just a horrendous pick. Of course, like the way you phrased it was after 200 ADP. Yeah, absolutely. There's a possibility that he might end up being the guy on my team. But if I already have, say, a Mondesi or Kyle Tucker, I have this start that's already with a bunch of 270, guys that are for sure going to hit under 270, or at least I'm pretty sure. And then you add a 220 guy on top. It is really a tough pill to swallow.
All right. Real quick, your bottom tier, you think there's a lot of value in your tier? The last one, this is tier 8.
Yeah, so I broke it down. Tier 8, there could be guys that can pop off, but it's really difficult to kind of siphon between those guys. Usually at this point, and these are guys that are going like after 350 overall average draft position. And the issue with the position in general this year, there's going to be even more platoons than ever. I mean, you start even at the top, like, we're talking about like a guy like Will Smith, who, if he was the first baseman on the team and got 550 plate appearances, you probably get 28 and 100 from the guy with 280 average, which is fantastic, phenomenal volume. Catcher, they're going to mix Austin Barnes in there because, believe it or not, Austin Barnes can hit a little bit. He's solid defensively, and they want to give Will Smith a rest. And unfortunately, there's no DH there. And that's kind of throwing the whole position off, unfortunately. So all these guys like, Buster Posey, who now is going to have to play some first base, especially if Belt is out early, he's going to have to get behind the plate. Like, these guys aren't, the National League catchers are now losing a lot of those, DH appearances Travis Darno was a perfect example of that. He got to, hit cleanup in the lineup and DH a bunch. And if there's going to be a DH, that really hurts a lot of their value. But to your question, I do think there are some guys like, for example, somebody that seems to be really popular, Tyler Stevenson, he could potentially steal that job. I mean, anything is possible there. Tucker Barnhart's solid. They have a nice platoon, thing going on there. Lefty hitter, righty hitter. Barnhart's decent defensively, but, Stevenson can pop off. Elias Diaz for Colorado. I mean, just the Coors factor alone, I think is worth something there.
Yes.
Max Stassi showed a little something.
Mendy would love to hear that, wouldn't you, Mendy? Shout out to Mendy out there. You love your Stassi.
I love it. I mean, they signed 37-year-old Kurt Suzuki, who, obviously still's got a little bit in the tank. So those two are going to, platoon there. And I think there are some guys there. Obviously, Alejandro Kirk on Toronto is a stud, but is he even going to start the year, as a catcher? They still have, Danny Jansen. When is Danny Jansen never going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
And Reese McGuire.
Maybe, Well, he might end up. I didn't have a good joke for him getting caught masturbating in the truck. So.
I was going to say, I don't know if you want to expose yourself at 400 ADP for his services, but.
Yeah, I thought he might have to beat it eventually because there's too many good players like Jansen and Kirk in his way. But anyways, I love Stevenson, but I haven't had the stones to draft him yet, and I feel like a loser now because you're saying it and you're putting yourself on the line. And I got to start trusting what I'm seeing, even if that's a deep reach. And it's not a big price to pay on Stevenson anyways. I'm talking draft champions and mostly drafted holds what I've done so far. But
here's the thing here's the other problem. So in a draft champions, he's not as strong of a pick because we don't know. I mean, if that's going to happen. And if you're drafting him as a second catcher, you almost have to grab your third one shortly thereafter because you don't want to take, an absolute zero there. So that's the problem with a guy like Stevens.
You're going to hate what I did in NFBC 50 I did about 10 days ago. I drafted Sanchez and Rooshman as my top two catchers.
Oh, nice.
And I only have two more on the roster. I think I screwed up.
How many
Edges and Chance Cisco are the other two.
Ooh, man, I got a thing for Cisco, man. I don't know what it is, but
yes,
just one day, I just feel like he's just gonna have this this month from
such a great name, such a great baseball name, and he's talented. He just massive defensive problems, but anyways, it's good to know. It's good to know. So check out that article when's that coming out, Vlad? The Catcher Tiers.
It is out. So it came out today, actually.
Oh, it did come out today. Oh, look at me. What a terrible researcher I am. Check it out. If you don't have a sub, then get a sub. You can read Vlad's stuff for the next year. It's a whole year subscription. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. All right, let's talk about some ADP stuff real quick. Now, you have an article that's out about ADP. Let's recue the
ADP is Kyle Tucker, top 30. Should I pair chart with Mondesi, Max Muncy? Should I wait on closers or draft Ryan Presley?
I like Ryan Presley. Do you like Ryan Presley?
I do like Ryan Presley, but man, is he getting expensive. Oh. He's getting 80-ish ADP. You gotta get down there. They gotta, when the pinatas hit, you literally gotta punch and push people out of your way to get your share of Ryan Presley. It's getting nasty down there.
Yeah, I got him way back in the middle of January at a solid price. I can live with that now, but you're right. And I want to talk about the market inefficiencies. I think this is so fascinating because this is where ADP becomes a real mind bender for a lot of people. And you get caught up in that number and you see it. Even if you're trying to avoid it, it's in the draft chart. It's in the draft board that you're on, whether you're on NFBC or wherever you are, it's there. You can't really hide from it. So how can you point out market inefficiencies in ADP and take advantage of it?
Man, it's a deep topic. It probably deserves its own full podcast.
It does.
But it really is it's just the key to everything in drafts. Being able to spot a major market inefficiency, whether a positive or negative one, is basically your path to a successful draft and really getting your team off to the right start. Having drafts, how people spread out what they consider the value of draft versus fab is in lineup changes, draft versus in season is different to everyone. Some people say 70-30 draft, some say 60-40, 80-20, but the draft is just such an important key component of it. And the ADP is it's ingrained in your brain. Like it's not like we get a chance to do all of our research before people start drafting. Like people start drafting during the World Series. Like we didn't even get a chance to even relax and, reset for a second. And there's already like new, data out there for the following season. And what happened for this year, especially, is in that, brief season or whatever, because I don't want.
Sorry, you can't avoid it. Just say it and keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many guys that are just, to me, overvalued, and I don't want to just not draft any of them because obviously there are going to be some breakouts there. I don't want to, that they were real breakouts. But I don't want to be too stubborn about it. But like, Grisham, Arozarena, Plesac, Max Fried, Teoscar, Lamet, Maeda, Galen, like these guys all had these most amazing, short seasons, and they're all like top 40, 50, 60 overall picks. And then deciphering between those, like what's real, what's not, like Dylan Moore is one of the ultimate guys. Like, I mean, of course there's a group of people that love him, group of people that won't touch him at his price tag.
Buzzworthy. That guy is one of the biggest, buzziest names in preseason 2021.
Yeah. And so, you don't want to avoid all those guys that broke out, entirely, but I'm kind of all over the place. What I'm saying is ADP is ingrained in our brain, and then it's tough for us to really separate and establish for ourselves like what the market price of someone should be. So then when we start, digging in, looking at projections, and then seeing like just in projections alone, like where something may be off, right? Like somebody like Stanton, for example, now he's going at 140 overall, where for many years, he was a second, third, fourth round pick. Now people have had enough. They're like, this guy just can't stay healthy. We're just not going to touch him. But then the projection systems have him, even for his 120 games or whatever they have him for like 34 home runs and, 90 RBIs or whatever. So think about it. If there actually is a season where he can stay healthy, you're looking at a major market inefficiency. The downside, of course, is the risk of injury. And that's already baked in to his price tag. And then for us, we're just basically needing to go through the entire draft, through all the positions and figure out where those guys are. For me, the way I do it is by creating my own projections and seeing where, like a perfect example would be like 2016. I remember it was Yasmani Grandal's breakout year. And he was going as like the 20th catcher around like 300th overall. And when I finished my projections, he popped in 6th or 7th. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a market inefficiency, at least for me. I could be right, I could be wrong on it, but I bought in on it. But I didn't buy in at that ranked at 6th price. You know what I mean? Like I still maybe picked him up like a round or two ahead of his ADP. And then that's the exercise we have to do for all these players, for all these positions. Like who are the guys that really, that are overpriced, underpriced, and how do I build around that?
That's right. And that's why you're cool with people getting their guys, right? You say, hey, ADP is great, but if somebody does something that is bucking the trends of ADP, you're not going to chastise them because, hey, you take a shot and you might not have the opportunity to get that player when they come back around. So sometimes you'll reach, or other people will reach in a moment because the way a draft is laid out, they just know where a player will end up or where they'll fall or where they'll disappear all of a sudden.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when I see draft boards or whatever, like, I have my internal feelings like, yes, I would build like that. No, I wouldn't. But I never go so far. I really try to check my own biases at the door. I can, I never want to say, oh, that's just a horrible pick, or especially not publicly. Never say that because
if anybody can say it, it'd be you, Vlad. You could say it.
but also, but you just don't know. You just never know. We could be wrong all the time about a lot of different things. And so, I mean, yeah, I can have those feelings about it, and usually I'll write about it, but I'll never like call someone out on a bad pick on Twitter.
Wait. You're willing to admit on the show live that you have been wrong before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There it is, folks. On the record. That's
why
people tune in, man.
Alone.
2 already. Wow. Yeah, that's what they call gotcha. We got you, dude. I just got you. You're so screwed, man. Now your career's probably over. I mean, if you're wrong once in fantasy baseball, you can never come back from it.
Well, I mean, I'm still trying to live up to the Christian Yelich call from a couple of years ago. I'm still waiting for that next Yelich to come. I mean, every year I write an article about who that might be.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I kind of, cheated on it. Basically, like, I'm not sure exactly who it is, but here are a few candidates who could fall into that bucket. But a guy like that doesn't come around all the time. You know what I mean? It's really tough to call.
Well said, sir. I think ADP messes with people with the guy I've been talking about, the turn into guy. There's people always want to draft someone like Wander Franco is a good example of that. He's going to turn into, a great shortstop. He's going to turn into Trey Turner, or he's going to turn into so-and-so. And sometimes you're waiting for someone to turn into somebody. Meanwhile, there's other guys that are doing great in the now and giving you production that could help you win now and not 3 years from now. Especially in redraft leagues. There's no need to be taking unnecessary risks on players that might turn into something. There's a big difference between taking a risk later in a draft, like you were saying with Wander Franco at the beginning of the show, later. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know. Randy Rosarini is a guy we'll talk about a little bit later, too. He's jumped up the charts. He's very popular now. And I don't know. I'm a little concerned about it. Even though it was an incredible run and he has a great set of skills, I'm still concerned about that type of risks.
Well, a lot of that also has to do with what type of format you're playing and what contest you're in. I think that makes all the difference, really, because if you're in the NFBC, the online championship that has a 6-figure prize on the line, or if the main event also 6-figure prize, there is an overall component where you're trying to beat out a couple thousand teams, and there is a little bit more risk, a little more upside that you may have to take in certain places. In a standalone, in a home league, in a satellite league, you don't necessarily, have to do that. And as I've gotten older, and as I think I've been becoming a better fantasy player, I'm more risk averse. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of, even in those contests, you know what I mean? Like, there are people that I play against in the NFBC who are some of the best players in the world. And sometimes you will look at their team after they draft. Like, we all stand around the draft boards in Vegas and we talk about them. And you look at their team, it's like, that's boring as hell. Like, you know what I mean? Like my one of my best friends in the industry, my best friend in the industry, who we started 20 years ago. We met actually, at each other's weddings and everything. Scott Genstad, writes for RotoWire. I always shit on his team. I'm like, that thing is just so boring and gross. Yet somehow it's always near the top of the standings. Steve Jupenka, who's won the main event overall. Same thing. You look at his teams a lot of time. Dave Potts, probably the most successful fantasy baseball player in history. He's won $1 million in DFS twice, and he's an NFBC Hall of Famer, and won the overall. Like, same thing. You look at his team, like, hey, why did you like Cole Calhoun there? And this is like 4 years ago, Calhoun. And you just never really know. And so the best thing with risk, it's maybe take a little bit less of it early. You don't have, if you really love Mondesi, maybe build around there with some solid guys that they're, I guess they're, whatever, the Inter SD, Ariel Cohen's, his new article came out, is a little lower than like, if you got a Mondesi, grab like a Freeman or an Arenado or, guys like that kind of build around so that you're not, your team isn't like risky, but kind of the whole way through.
Yeah, that is great stuff. Thanks, Vlad. This is great stuff. We're talking here.
I'm just rambling, man. I like, seriously, I'm not joking. I'm the worst Russian ever. You guys are catching me buzzed. I've literally had half a beer because I haven't drank in a month, and this is why I'm going in like different, directions. But hopefully everyone's following.
Believe it or not, Vlad, the show is making sense. So all is well. All is well. As they say in Animal House, all is well. Okay, cool. Great. We can close that segment. Move on. I want to say we are part of the Roto Fanatic Podcast Network, by the way. I have a show called the Hey, it's Rico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast, which you are currently listening to in podcast format, or you're watching live right there. Can you see my nose hairs? I don't know if you can. Anyways, we appreciate your support. Don't forget, Turn 2 Podcast is the other part of the Roto Fanatic Podcast Network. Check out rotofanatic.com. We got great rankings. What do you think about rankings, Vlad? Are you a hardcore rankings guy, or do you just do it because it's part of the business, or what?
No, I don't even do rankings. Basically I set things up in tiers. Really, that's really the only way to do it. So
That's impressive. I'm proud of you. Well, people love rankings. You can't deny that. They're very popular among the masses. So we give it to you on rotofanatic.com. We also got a high-low series where we go head-to-head with one of our writers who thinks they're going to be higher on a guy like Whit Merrifield, which we did, or Dansby Swanson, or the low guy on those. So check those out. It's good stuff. My buddy Dave Funnel, who is also part of Rotofanatic, a shout out to Dave. He does great work with the week that was. Check that article out. It gives you all the information you need to know from the previous week. Plus, it gives you useful information. It's not just mindless data. So please check it out at rotofanatic.com. All right. It's now time to have some fun. I know the show's been very boring so far, and we apologize for that. But now we're going to have a good time with Vlad. We're going to step into Enrico's Inquisition. Are you ready for this segment of the show, Vlad Sedler?
Yes.
Bryce Harper or Lenny Dykstra?
Bryce Harper.
Oceans or lakes? Which do you prefer?
Lakes. Oceans terrify me.
Van Halen or Van Hagar?
Oh, Van Halen. Not a contest.
WW84, the movie, or Trevor Bauer?
Trevor Bauer has more positive things going for him. He is a good pitcher.
Nelly, get ready for some doozies. Because it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show, Enrico's Inquisition.
That's right. I am very excited for this segment with Vlad. Vlad has a deep knowledge of a lot of pointless pop culture stuff from years gone by, and I'm hoping we can, pry into his mind and see what he favors based on various topics from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. Who's to say? It's going to be fun. You ready?
Let's do it.
Woohoo! All right. First off, Anchorman or Mean Girls?
Oh man, I really like Mean Girls. I like that kind of genre, those type of movies, and I don't know. Yeah, when at that age, I like. I mean, I would actually probably fantasy baseball community will cancel me for that, but I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to answer it, and that is my decision. Mean Girls.
I am proud of you. I know Yancey Eaton would be very, very happy to hear that. Shout out to Yancey, who also wanted me to tell you to say hello or something. Can't remember exactly what it was, but he says he gives you his best, and he loves Mean Girls. If you don't know who Yancey Eaton is, he uses the gif of Rachel McAdams all the time. How about Growing Pains or Family Ties?
Growing Pains for me. Just
really? Is that easy?
Yeah, I don't know. There was something a little depressing about Family Ties. I don't know what it was. Like, obviously I watched it. I think it was because the Michael J. Fox character was just so different. Like I was infatuated with the Back to the Future movies. And then, he was just like, super preppy, Alex P. Keaton. And I don't think I dug it. And I think I had a crush on like the one of the girls on Growing Pains, like one of Kirk Hammett's girlfriends or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Not the middle sister, not her.
No? Oh man, Tracy Gold. She had a tough life. Poor Tracy.
Yeah. I
don't remember her character's name though. So, but Leo DiCaprio made his debut on that show. So
that's right. Fun. That's right. I remember Leo.
My friend actually has this theory that all current actors that are like the most popular famous actors in Hollywood all started as child actors. Like Christian Bale, yep. Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, a lot of them did. That's made their appearances early on there in the 80s.
Yeah, like more than ever. It's really bizarre. The more I looked into it, the more it started to be like, wow, this is kind of making sense. It's a strange world out there.
One of my like ex-girlfriend from years ago, she was like randomly best friends with Ricky Schroeder from Silver Spoons.
Silver Spoons.
So weird.
With Alfonso Ribeiro.
Yeah.
Who'd you like better? Would you like Silver Spoons or Fresh Prince?
Fresh Prince, man. That was a different age in my life, right? I was like more of a teenager during Fresh Prince. Silver Spoons, like just some stuff you saw as a kid, but Fresh Prince was a more quality product.
Okay, cool. I love the Fresh Prince. That's a great show. Will Smith hasn't made a good movie in a very long time, but the Fresh Prince will always be great. That's my opinion. So. Metallica or Iron Maiden?
Metallica for me, just more familiar with their music, would buy their CDs and blew the hell out of the Black Album, yeah, Metallica.
Nice call. The 1988 Dodgers or the 2020 Dodgers?
Oh, the 1988 by far. It's just different. It's just different when you're a kid. That was the most memorable memory of all time for me, the 88 World Series. I had just come back from basically my first ever hockey game. Russians, you're thrown on skates at an early age, but I didn't start till I was, 10, playing ice hockey. And
I'm not Russian. I threw skates on early too, by the way. Just want to
nice. Yeah. And you're from Detroit.
I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah, you gotta play. You gotta skate. I just remember coming home, watching that game, and my, Russian grandparents who hardly spoke English. When Gibson hit that home run, I started yelling, running around, and threw the remote. They thought I just completely lost my shit. They just didn't understand what happened. It was the happiest moment of my sports life, and you just can't replicate that. There's so much nostalgia with it. That it's just not the same. Here I was sweating my DFS showdown lineup, during the last game of the series. And all right, we're gonna win this now. Cool.
Oh, that's funny, man. I got to tell you, that is still one of my favorite memories. And it'll always be special for me because Kirk Gibson was a Tiger. He won a World Series here, and then he went to the Dodgers. That was his first year after leaving Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I remember being a kid, just like you, how cool it was. It was such a unique moment. Well,
here's the thing, and you guys are going to call me absolutely crazy. That was my first gut moment. You don't understand. I can't even put to you what it meant to me. This is where I kind of felt that I don't know. I just always same thing. I called the Justin Turner's home run in the Houston when they went to the World Series, but I think it was the series before that. Literally called on Twitter, Turner sitting a home run there, and he did it. That Gibson home run, everything was setting up for that moment. And I'm sure a lot of people thought the same thing, but I was just in my head as a 9-year-old, I was there's absolutely no way this guy who shouldn't be up. And I was thinking before the game, he needs to come up to bat because he's going to win this game. And then when Lasorda got him in there, it's it's over. We're going to win this game. And then we're going to win the World Series. So that was my first gut moment.
Wow, dude, that is breaking news. That is so cool. Yes. Woohoo! This is why we do the show. Vlad. These moments like this.
You just pull it out of me, man. I haven't thought about that in years, but
you're like
my rototherapist.
Oh, wow. That's funny. My master's, I'm working on being a mental health counselor. So maybe that makes sense. Maybe that'll be my calling. Maybe I'll be counseling people who are struggling with their roto teams. They've lost every year and they just need help. They need someone to vent to, Mm-hmm. That's not a bad idea. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. Helping each other here.
Right now, someone's listening. He's like, you are an idiot, Mike. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Sopranos or Game of Thrones?
Don't make me choose these tough decisions.
I know. It's not cool.
Probably Game of Thrones.
What?
Only because of, again, it's all just nostalgia. That was a show that my wife and I would pre-plan. We would sit, make time for it before our son was born, and it just meant a lot to sit down and have that time together and watch. Sopranos I kind of watched sporadically over many seasons with different people, myself. So to me, I think, for me, everything comes down to nostalgia, I think, a lot. And so I think for that reason, Game of Thrones.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry to disappoint you, Michael.
Dude, Vlad, Game of Thrones went to hell. I mean, the show just fell apart, and it's left a sour taste in my mouth,
Yeah, but you know what? I also liked Lost. And I know that show ended poorly. But it was the journey, not the destination,
God, I usually kind of follow that ethos. I'm down with what you're saying, but they just screwed up season 8 so bad that it's hard to forget. Because season 8 was going to be so important because there was a lot to culminate to. That's why it's so important, and it's more than just the journey. The journey was great, but there were so many things that we wanted to know about and get the inside details of that we didn't get really necessarily.
Well,
and it's
the problem with that show is it was overtaken by HBO bigwigs and their writers because homeboy author Jackson Wright, writer's block, and just couldn't finish his book and finish the story, at least from what I know. And so it didn't go to a place where the creator really wanted it to go. So at least that's my opinion. They kind of screwed it up. HBO screwed it up.
So you love movies?
Of course.
Well, I mean, some people come on the show, they're like, oh, I don't really watch movies. You never know. People are weird. So,
well, I mean, obviously, I haven't been to a theater in a while, and that whole world has kind of changed. But
yes,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I went and saw Coming to America as a 8-year-old, in the theaters 3 times. I asked my grandparents to take me to see Coming to America more than once in the theaters. I've seen everything
Who the
from the
fuck
80s
is
and
this
90s.
asshole?
I just happen to have that one in the bank, so
Why'd you pull it up so quick?
it was just in the bank already. I love Coming to America. You don't twist my arm, man.
Ooh, you're good. This guy.
Great movie, great movie. And what about the sequel here? Are you freaking out? Like it's going to be bad? It's PG-13 too. I'm kind of bummed it's PG-13.
Of course it's going to be bad. A movie 30 years later, like you just tell from the previews, like it's just not the same. Like when I was a kid, I remember in summer camp, I loved the Back to the Future trilogy so much. I started writing the script for Back to the Future 4. I don't think I got past the second chapter, but you have to do those things right away. You can't wait, 2 decades, like Saved by the Bell. Like it's just a different audience, different generation. It's done. So of course I will watch it. Of course there will be some nostalgia. I was like, oh, cool, it's Arsenio Hall again. Oh, it's the guys from the barbershop. But it's just gonna suck, I'm sure.
Yeah, and now they're old, so maybe they don't have to put on as much makeup when they're in the barbershop.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who's to say? Yeah, that just bums me out. I mean, you remember when the Crystal Skull came out, the Indiana Jones sequel? That was terrible.
Yes. It's just, of course, not the same. And you watch things at different ages. Yeah, it doesn't translate.
But you know what was Clerks 2? I actually thought Clerks 2 was good, and that was 12 years after the fact. It's surprising.
There are, of course, there are exceptions, and that's because it's. Why am I blanking on his name? He's just a genius. He did part 2 as well, right?
Of which
Clerks.
movie?
He did Clerks too, right?
Kevin Smith?
Yeah. Did he?
Yeah, he wrote and directed it.
94 and he did in 2006. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, because the same guy did it, Kevin Smith, and he's a genius.
Yeah, but you got the same actor, Harrison Ford, playing, Dr. Jones decades later. It just didn't work. And Spielberg came. I don't know. Sometimes it's just not a good idea. But anyways, I'm gonna watch Coming to America, just like I watched the sequel to Super Troopers, and it was awful. But I still went to the movie theater and saw it anyways. So.
Yeah. Sometimes we just do things because it just reminds us of something from our childhood, and it makes us feel good for a little bit. That's okay.
And
as Stuart Smalley would say.
Good enough. You're smart enough. Gosh darn it. People like you, Vlad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan?
Oh, man. Hulk, of course. I don't
Is
know.
that a no-brainer?
I don't know about this, here's the thing. A lot of, I'm just going back to that time and that era. Like,
let's keep it in their prime. Yeah, I want to make this clear. We're talking about in their prime when they were who they were, not some of the things they've done outside since then. So.
Yes, because when I grew up, it was, it was the WWF, and that was more prominent than the NWA. And, right? And is that what it was called, NWA?
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that time, Ric Flair dominated there, and Hogan was there. And this is, I kind of stopped following wrestling before things kind of changed. And it was Hulk, it was Macho Man, and Ultimate Warrior. This is even pre-Undertaker, really. Undertaker started popping on around there. So, like, I remember, playing a bathtub with my Greg the Hammer Valentine, WWF toy, and he was fighting Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. So,
Greg the Hammer Valentine. That is not to be confused with Owen Valentine, who passed away tragically. So
Owen Hart.
Oh, I'm doing Valentine and Hart. Look at me. I'm an idiot.
Yes.
I'm making a weird connection there.
Yeah, it's a good connection. It's the right connection.
It is Valentine's Day in a couple days. So
it is, yeah.
Wow, Greg the Hammer Valentine. I always mixed him up with the Hart brothers. I did. I thought he was like their cousin or something. Strange.
I mean, why not, right? Same family of love.
They did have they're like a big ass Canadian family of wrestlers, so anything's possible. We always ask this one: sliders or curveballs?
I like a good curve.
Best curve? Is it Kershaw's or someone else?
Kershaw, Nola.
Nola. No one's mentioned him. That's a new one.
I think that's his. See, you give me half a beer, and I'm like, is that even his main? No,
just go with it. Go with it. Somebody said, "What about slurs?" I never mentioned slurs.
Yeah. Nola has a nasty curveball, so he's up there. We'll see what he does this year, man. He's pricey.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. I can really appreciate that. Jack Nicholson or Meryl Streep?
Well, Jack's one of my favorites of all time. Just everything about him is just so smooth and suave. I mean, Meryl Streep is is, Hollywood royalty.
Yeah.
But Jack is like he's the king, and he's still in these amazing roles, and just everything he does, just his essence is legit.
The 1993 LA Kings or the 2014 LA Kings?
Anything 90s, man. I'm always going to pick. I'm always going to pick the 90s. That was.
We're seeing a trend here.
I was. I mean, that was that was my era, right? I mean, that was the most important thing for me at that time as a 14-year-old playing ice hockey in LA, being a Kings fan, and wanting them to win the cup, and them actually getting there. Having Gretzky on the team, Robitaille, all these guys. It was a really big deal, and I would play out. In my front garage, I had like the hockey net, had my rollerblades on, and I would like play out the games before the day of the playoff games. Like, oh, okay, Kings are going to lose like 4-1, 4-1 today. Oh, here they're going to win 3-2. Like, yeah, I was crazy kid.
Oh yeah, that's great, man. That takes me back. I used to do the same thing, and we do with that and NBA games. Yeah, me and my neighbor, we'd go over to his house and we'd reenact Dallas Maverick games when they had the trifecta of Jimmy Jackson, Jason Kidd, and Jamal Mashburn. So.
A little tidbit there. Do you know that all three of them dated
Tony Braxton,
the same woman?
I've heard that maybe some of that was bogus in recent years, but hey, I like the story anyway, so let's just go with it. Tony Braxton. I mean, "Breathe Again." That was a great song.
Yeah. "Unbreak My Heart."
Oh yeah, I forgot about "Unbreak My Heart." Man, you're good. You definitely have the knowledge. I'm impressed. So did you play NHL 94 when you were a kid then?
All the time. Myself team? And my neighbors. I was partial to the Blackhawks, Jeremy Roenick and Steve Larmer. Great connection. Chelios, Belfour. Yeah.
Mike Gardner, was he on there still, or he might have been gone.
Gardner was he was like a 99 speed, I think, but he was on the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken. It's been so long. I'm not good.
Well, the Chicago was that was one of those popular teams on that game. They were huge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody wanted to be the Blackhawks or the Canadians or the Red Wings. Yeah, those are some of the best teams. And the Kings were good because that was their Stanley Cup run year. But
yep.
Sega Genesis or SNES?
Genesis. I was all about the Genesis back then, for sure.
Yes, I knew it. I knew there was something I liked about you. We had a connection, and we were Genesis people. We did not have an SNES. All of the great sports games of the 90s prior to the PlayStation, they were all played on a Genesis, and I love it.
I wasn't good, and that's probably why I stopped playing video games in my teens, just because my friends would just wax me, just absolutely destroy me.
I'm terrible, but hey, it's not about. You said it's about the journey. It's not about the destination. So
indeed.
But if you're terrible while you're playing on the journey, that is kind of a bummer too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Finally, for love or money.
I mean, that's a very, very deep question.
It's the closer. We always close with this one.
I mean, it's got to be love because, that's at the end. That's what that is what makes you happy.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. That's a beautiful answer. Yeah. That's all. Say no more. Well done. VLAD SEDLER, ladies and gentlemen, bringing his A game tonight on the Hey, it's Rico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Don't forget, Palazzo Podcast at protonmail.com. If you have any questions, thoughts, or queries, Palazzo Podcast on Twitter, 2 L's, 2 Z's.
Utah, give me 2.
We appreciate having Vlad on tonight. This has been a lot of fun. Now we're going to talk some more fantasy action because it's time for a segment we're calling Three's Company. Now, this is in tribute to you, Vlad. You told me you were big Three's Company guy from what I recall, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know when I had time for everything, like homework, all the after school stuff, books. And then sports. I did like my brother and I did karate 3 days a week, music lessons, like acting classes. And yet still I watched every single sitcom of the 80s, like all of them. But Three's Company was for whatever reason, my favorite. Just loved everybody, and Mr. Roper, Terry
before it became Mr. Furley.
Yeah. Larry even.
Oh,
I think everyone but Janet. Even Janet had some good.
Yeah. Behind the scenes on that didn't go well for Janet. She had a tough was a tough career for her, but you know, she was still on a very popular show and she had a good run. So it's okay, Janet. I bet there's no way that whatever her name, I can't think of her actual name, but the lady who played Janet. Oh, Joyce DeWitt. Thank you. Thank you. There's no way that Joyce DeWitt knows that right now there's two guys talking about her on a fantasy baseball podcast. You ever wonder that? Like right now, someone's talking about Vlad Sedler on a movie podcast.
You never know, right? And Farnsworth reach out to you.
He did.
I had Sam Hilliard's mom respond to one of my tweets the other day.
Oh,
because we're in a, you know, there was only a few of us in the Sam Hilliard fan club, but apparently lots of people are coming out now that at least until they sign, like, you know, Matt Kemp and Puig and all these guys, and then he, you know, goes back to, you know, the Neverland and doesn't get to play.
Thanks a lot for ruining the party, Vlad. No, it's the Rockies. We all know how that front office works. It's a nightmare. Anyways, so the Three's Company segment, more than the TV show, this is a segment we're doing, and it's basically about players that I'm finding in drafts that are bunched together. And surprising, there's 3 of them. So yes, we're going to look at these and Vlad's going to give us opinion, which one he likes, which one he prefers. But I would be remiss if I did not debut the song that I worked on for this segment. So here it is. This is the Three's Company song. Take it for what it is.
Drafting in the 9th round. Drafting in the 9th round. Staring Matt Olson down. Staring Matt Olson down. I can't decide between Olson, Goldie, or Bob. Three's Company 2. Drafting in the 12th round. Drafting in the 12th round. Another top closer down. Another top closer down. I can't decide between Anderson, Yates, or Kenley. Three's Company 2.
That's pretty much it. I just did a couple verses.
That is legit, man. This is why this is the one podcast that I went out of my way. I was like, I want to be on this man's podcast. So I like your style. I like the music. Let's roll.
Thanks, Vlad. You know, it takes 2 to tango. You inspired the song. So with your thoughts, I started thinking about it, and now we have it. So Three's Company, it's always a crowd when you're drafting. We all are stuck at certain points in our draft. Some of us are very decisive. Like, you know, we know what we're doing. We know what we're going to do no matter what. We have a queue set up. Hell, we might not even be there. It could be auto-picked. But there's others of us that struggle, and we don't know what to do when there's a bunch of players around a specific position. What do I do? So let's try this one on for size. Charlie Morton, Chris Paddock, and Lance McCullers. They're kind of bunched together in ADP generally. And by the way, most ADP we use on this show is NFBC.com, NFBC ADP as of February 1st. And we're specifically using Draft Champions only. So it cuts out some of the other formats. And Draft Champions, for those that don't know, is a draft and hold type league. So having said all that, which of the 3 would you prefer if you were in the market for a pitcher?
So between Morton, McCullers, and Paddock.
Yeah.
Right now, McCullers is my guy. I'm just looking, you know, I just did a battle of the experts series that we have with Ray Flowers over at fantasyguru.com, and we broke down McCullers. I did the 4 argument for him, and he's just a guy that's been really consistent as far as everything down to his, like, you know, his expected metrics, like his velocity post Tommy John didn't dip down all that much. Like, really for him, all it really takes, I think, is health, right? I mean, he pitches in a fantastic home park. The teams around him that he's going to face more often than not are getting worse, at least to me, especially the A's. I mean, like, that's just going to be, like, you know, a beautiful matchup to pick on all the time this year. And I just think he's legit. Like, I have got no problem with Charlie Morton, but the fact that he's 37 and, you know, that ballpark sometimes is not so forgiving. I feel like the offenses in the NL East are getting a little better. So, you know, a little bit of an adjustment there, switching AL to NL. So I don't know. Not as big on Morton. And then Paddock is a little bit of an unknown. It is interesting there in San Diego that Joe Musgrove actually in NFBC is actually leapfrogged him in average draft position. He seems to be preferred over Paddock. And I mean, who's to say that? I mean, you know, honestly, if I had to put money on it, I probably think that Paddock out earns him just by a little bit. I think Musgrove is higher upside, but think to where we were last year looking at Paddock and going like a 50th overall, and now he's just like just a draft day afterthought. Something about that just kind of in the gut just feels a little wrong. So I like Paddock, but I think McCullers would probably be my number one.
That bums me out because just had a conversation on this very show with the Rotosaurus guys, Jake and Dave, and Jake was making the case against McCullers, and I made the same case on the previous episode with Sarah Sanchez, where I was saying players I was trying to avoid, and McCullers was one of them. But it's not because he's not good; it's just because I fear the injury risk all the time.
Yeah, but here's the thing: he was hiccup free in his 2020, right? Like he's past the Tommy John. Like he wasn't really an injury risk prior to all of that. He was really pretty solid and consistent. Like you kind of know what you're going to get so long as you get the innings. I think a lot of these guys are going to. I think the innings you're going to get out of him are going to be quality, and I think we're going to get at least 130. Like you can't avoid all pitchers that have had some injury at some point in their history in their lives. You got to take a dip in on some people. So maybe you go less. Maybe you don't grab the Lamets and other guys of the world. But I am personally taking a stand on McCullers, I believe.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's 5 full seasons, never pitched more than 128 innings. And that's because of injuries. That's a huge part of it. And I just feel like I'd be safer with Paddock. I feel like Paddock is more durable, even though he's safer. Yeah. But McCullers, when he plays, like you said, he's legit. I mean, I love his curveball. He just basically throws curveballs all the time, which is cool because I kind of like that style. Oddly enough, that's what made Charlie Morton, who's part of this triumvirate, that really revived his career. So that's interesting. Okay. I can go either way. I like that. I'm going to look into it more because you say you like him, because I respect your opinion. And that's why we do this show. It gets my mind going, and it just gets difficult when you hear two people you respect a lot and they both say 2 different things on the same player, and you have to make the decision in the end. Like, well, all right, I have the data, but I got to make a choice.
And that's the thing is if you don't, the beauty is, at least in that range, is you don't have to buy in on it, because then you'll regret it later, right? If you need to be like convinced on someone, but you're not feeling it in your gut, like, there's in that range, there are a million guys like the 2 that you named. There's Sixto, there's Urias, there's Gosman. There are a million guys. So that's the beauty of fantasy baseball is it's wide, it's vast, it's deep. You don't have to go in on all the same guys everyone else is.
Well, the next one is Jose Urquidy of the Houston Astros, Marcus Stroman, or Nathan Eovaldi of the Boston Red Sox. So Eovaldi got pumped up a little bit by my pal Ryan Bloomfield, who is, by the way, congratulations to Ryan Bloomfield. Shout out to him. Fantasy Sports Writers Association award winner this year. That's fantastic. Congratulations, Ryan. Woohoo!
Ryan's a good friend. The dude is sharp as hell, and I listen and respect everything he says. So shout out to him. I guess a lot of times it depends what you're looking for. It's tough in a vacuum to just say
it is
kind of one guy over the other.
But if you were looking for a starting, let's say you're looking for a starter at this point, I need a starting pitcher.
I usually venture away from the AL East guy. Usually, if I'm in a tiebreaker and I'm looking at an NL versus AL guy, especially with the DH no longer there in the NL, so for me, Stroman over Eovaldi, so long as I have good I have good strikeouts at that point. But Urquidy, man, he just feels like a guy that can really provide good ratios. And then when you see someone like Saris, who is probably like to me at least, like the fantasy baseball sort of savant of pitching, like just one of the few people that I really trust in that space, say that he loves Urquidy, it just makes you take another look. So in Houston against some of those teams there, it's close for me, but I think I'd have to lean Urquidy.
I love it. Even though Bloomfield loves Eovaldi because he popped up on his Bloom board, he still has health concerns and he pitches in the AL East. It does make me suspect, makes me a little concerned. But I like Urquidy's layout more. I like where he's pitching, and I know that they can rely on him. If healthy, I like him. I think that's a good call. Stroman, I've never been a Stroman guy myself, but maybe he'll make me eat my words this year because he's on a 1-year deal. The next batch is outfielders. David Dahl, Jackie Bradley Jr., who, as far as I know, still hasn't signed with anybody yet. There's been Red Sox chatter, so that makes it weird, but he will sign eventually. Or Adam Eaton. So Dahl, Bradley Jr., or Eaton?
So with the possibility that Adam Eaton could just, lock in and hit second in the White Sox lineup, even though he doesn't really provide much across the board. There's a solid floor with him, especially with runs. He's going to be hitting in front of Eloy and Abreu and some of those guys. If that is the case and he hits second, that would probably be the pick. I like to gamble a little bit. I was talking on a podcast earlier today about Ray Flowers about David Dahl. We were breaking down the AL West and about how maybe getting out of Colorado is a good thing. There's something about the being up in the elevation and the wear and tear it takes on the body, especially going back and forth for a guy like that who is so injury prone.
And they don't know what they're doing.
And they don't know what they're doing. To have some stability with a team and have a role, get a fresh start, like maybe it'll work.
I love it. I love hearing that out of you. I love me some David Dahl this year. In Texas, fresh start, new opportunities. Colorado is a negative place. It just is. And I like Bud Black as a manager, but I am not a fan of how they run their organization. Arenado's free, DJ LeMahieu left, and he did well. Now, all these are 3 different players with different types of skill sets and different types of home parks, so they're not all going to be the same batch, but I like it. I love Eaton, though. To me, that would be my choice because of the floor, and I think he's underrated. And if it's a points league, OBP league, it gets even bigger bump for me. We talked about this on the Roto Fanatic podcast the other night with Matt Williams and Carm Bejarano and Paul Momino, which you can check out on this feed, that Adam Eaton is undervalued. I love Adam Eaton, so give me Adam Eaton all day long. I don't even care if he hits second. I'm a huge fan of his, and I just feel like he's always underrated, perpetually. So I want people to know that I'm on the record as being a big Eaton guy right here.
Eating up all the Eaton shares like Pac-Man.
Oh, I need the Pac-Man. That's a good call. I'm going to write that down, too. I need a Pac-Man sounder.
If you're eating.
Yeah. Damn it. I feel like a loser now. This show, we just canceled the show. Turn it off. Turn it off.
Turn it off. Don't let this air.
This is it's a failure. Okay, next one is Adam Ottavino, Emilio Pagan of the Padres, or Jonathan Hernandez of the Texas Rangers. Now, this is a little bit deeper. Some possible closers, possible opportunities for saves and holds, depending on your league. Which of these 3 do you like?
So if you are in my NFBC league this year, please turn off the podcast at this moment and do not listen to this next section. But I am drafting up Adam Ottavino, believing that he is going to, that's the reason why they grabbed him, is because Matt Barnes stinks. And Adam Ottavino, you could say that fast 15 times, is going to close there. The problem is they're just showcasing him anyways for a trade. So maybe, it's still really messy. Here's my thing. It's also a matter of getting to Ottavino by default, because Pagan is now, they just signed Melanson. We're talking about Emilio Pagan, San Diego, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they got Melanson, they got Pomeranz, so save ops are going to be tough to come by. And then Jonathan Hernandez is just the ideal setup man. I think they're still going to give Jose Leclerc a shot to close out games, and I think Hernandez is a good multi-innings guy, good high leverage situation guy. So if you're talking about saves, I think Ottavino gets the most out of those. And yeah, I mean, he had a horrible earn run average last year. That all came basically in one game, because if you look at the number of innings he had, it was under 20. It was just one blow up at day game or just something crazy. Yeah. So can't put too much stock into the short sample.
Exactly. And that's what you get. Ottavino is a solid relief pitcher, and if he gets traded, that's too bad. But you just gave away your strategy, and now you're screwed, Vlad. This is the most popular podcast in all of America, so everyone's gonna know. Everyone's gonna know what you're doing.
It's going to be one day, my friend. This is good stuff.
Thank you, Vlad. You're very kind. I appreciate the kind words, and I always accept compliments. Men have a hard time with compliments, as Yancey Eaton likes to say, but not me, because we're gonna tear down those barriers one day at a time.
That's right.
Last one, another Red Sox, Alex Verdugo, or a former Dodger, by the way, Ramon Laureano of the Athletics, or Kyle Lewis, the reigning Rookie of the Year for the Seattle Mariners. Lewis, Verdugo, or Laureano?
I like me some batting average in that range where these guys go 130 to 150 overall. Alex Verdugo, one of my gut calls is that this is from a couple of years ago, and this is before I knew he was going to go to the Boston Red Sox. This man one day is going to win a batting title. And yeah, so when you had these other 2 guys who could potentially hit 240, 250, even though they offer more pop and Laureano more steals and even, give me the kind of good overall guy who's going to lead off atop a lineup that is actually pretty solid there with Bogarts, JD Martinez, even though he's in the twilight of his career. Verdugo at the top of that lineup could score 100 plus runs. He could hit over 300 very easily. Won't get you a lot of homers, won't steal many bases, but to me, that's a no-brainer.
Beautiful, man. I've been targeting Verdugo a lot, and I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel good. All warm and fuzzy inside. Thank you so much. There it is. That is the segment called Three's Company in honor of our guest, VLAD SEDLER. We'll play the song underneath again. Don't forget that this is part of the RotoFanatic Podcast Network. You can check out rotofanatic.com. And I also want to give a shout out to the Fantasy Flock Network, which is a YouTube channel that I was on with my friend Mason Dodd. Well, he's not my friend. I didn't know him. Now I know him. He's kind of my friend. And I did 5 videos talking about various different things. So check it out if you get a chance. Fantasy Flock, Fantasy Baseball Network on YouTube. Mason Dodd is a good dude. He reached out to us, and we're trying to grow and learn and meet other people. So if you would be so kind, check out the videos, the Fantasy Flock Network, Fantasy Baseball on YouTube. Thank you very much. Okay, so there's Three's Company. Hopefully that was fun. And that was a fitting tribute to a top-notch guest, VLAD SEDLER. Vlad, do people ever call you Vladimir, or is it always Vlad?
Yeah, I've gotten Vladimir. It was tough growing up in the 80s in Los Angeles. The Cold War, everybody hated Russians. Kids would make fun of me.
Oh, God.
Even to this day, you go to a Starbucks. Well, now I do the mobile app, so they have to have my name printed on it. But I get Glad, brag, like all kinds of, everything you can imagine. So it's been rough. I don't think I liked my name for a little bit as a kid, but now, I love it. I embrace it. It's going to be a guy that's going to rock the baseball and fantasy world, especially all those who doubt him with my namesake. So yeah, I'm good with it.
What about Vladdy? Vladdy.
I got people that call me Vladdy. That works. More like female friends, Vladdy. And then you got or Vladdy, or like my Irish friend, Vladdy, my laddie, you get it all.
Man, you are such a fascinating guy. Very clever. You hang out with some elite people, man. I feel like I'm barely holding serve here with Vlad, but we're doing the best we can here on the Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast. This one is called Popular Players. Now, I don't know how this one's going to go, but we're trying new things on the show. We take a chance, and, we're not alone, Vlad. We're in this together. So I want it to be about, drafting lessons, players who have risen that you've noticed, not just from ADP, but you've been taking sooner or later, or players that are rising that don't like necessarily. I don't know. It's a new segment. And, of course, I did a dumb song here, so it's a very brief song. I'll make it fast. So, you're from the 90s. Hopefully you'll like this.
Oh, yeah.
You're Randy Rosarina. You're popular. You crushed 10 bombs in one postseason. Everyone says you're a catch. You're popular. You made a lot of clutch hits. Now you're a top 60 pick.
All right, there we go.
That's right. It. I like
Randy,
it.
Not a Surf, man. I love Not a Surf. That was an underrated band in the 90s, by the way.
Yeah.
And that was a good 90s song. In fact, it makes me want to do some karaoke. You ever do karaoke?
I love it, man. I love it. I that's what I asked my wife for my birthday. I want a karaoke machine, and she's not having it because in the house will get louder. And when can you actually do karaoke? We have neighbors that are really loud with their karaoke, and it makes me jealous. I wrote songs and wrote raps, wrote rhymes in college, even performed some of them, and I just love to sing, love to rap.
I think it's a family event you can do. Karaoke is great for the whole family. You can have a lot of fun. It's good times.
In LA, we have these they're little private Korean karaoke rooms. They're just phenomenal because you can just, you're not in front of a big crowd of people. You're just with your group of 8-10 friends, and they give the soju and the hyped beers and some Korean barbecue, and you're just sitting there just loud in this little room. It's phenomenal, man. I miss that. I can't wait to get out back into the real world. Cool.
You're telling me, man. Big proponent of the rooms and not doing bar karaoke. We've had this place in Ann Arbor called Blue Karaoke. We went there for years. You get a big room. It had couches and lights, and it was great. It's just you and your friends, nobody else.
You're just more comfortable,
It is. It's like more intimate, and like you can just, by the time it gets late into the night, you can't even hear who's on the mic anymore because everyone's singing along and they're all drunk at the same time. So.
Yeah.
Anywho, this segment's about some popular players. So have you noticed anybody that you like that's rising up in the drafts? Anybody that seems to be rising that you're like, wow, I like that guy.
I mean, it's again, you can do a whole segment on this. Whole episode on it. It's constantly evolving. It's changing every day based on little bits of news because we don't have training camp yet, and players are moving very volatilely after signing. A lot of the movement. Actually, this is what I'm starting this week. A series that I did last year, leading up to the draft. That once a week I write an ADP market report column. I'm starting it. Actually, we get off the air, I'm going to start cranking it out. But it's basically just showing actually Bloomfield is doing something similar. I've seen some other people do it, just kind of showing the movers and shakers over the last couple weeks in comparison to the 2 previous weeks before it. But like a lot of movement with closers, especially of draft champions, like Minnesota signs Colomé, so Taylor Rogers falls considerably. Melanson, like I'm in the middle of a draft and I'm like, I'm going to get Melanson in 5 rounds. This is cool. He's going to sign somewhere. And he signs at San Diego and then pop, someone else takes him. Jake McGee in San Francisco, another guy that I think is moving up because people see a path for him to close. So, those guys. And then I'm noticing guys like, sort of the old and boring, like Rendon and Bregman, just, going around 50 ADP like it's nothing. Like those guys could really smash at those values, right? I mean, it's just non-sexy picks, but they're consistent performers. I think they're worth it. And then Jordan Alvarez is really climbing. Like even though he's utility only, like you can't get him for 80, 90 overall anymore. He's going up to 50, 60 now.
Yeah, I think those are some outstanding observations, Vlad. It's funny how these drafts evolve, especially if you do early drafting, which was not always my thing. It was an early thing for a lot of people who are pros. But for me, I usually drafted around late February, beginning of March. I was just like one of your regular dudes. Mm-hmm. This is my first year taking it up a notch and drafting much earlier. And you can see the evolution of player, like the player ADPs and the growth of players who rise up and the players that fall down. And you're like, oh, God, I remember when I can get so-and-so at that price, and now I can't get him at that price. Or now this player is falling to me, and I want him. I find that to be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. And we could be drafting much differently now than we would be, 2-3 weeks from now, because so much can change, and it's going to change even more so in spring training. Oh
yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I hear you. Boy, we just kind of got going. I feel like we've done an hour and a half, and I feel like there's so much more I want to ask you. So I'm going to leave this as an open invitation to come back on the show another time.
Oh,
we could talk more about your fantasy process. I would love to get you on the record before the season starts with some Shine or Ride the Pine predictions on some projections, which are always fun. What do you say to that?
I'm in, man. You don't have to ask me twice, dude. I love, love chatting it up.
Thanks, dude. That's great, man. This has been fantastic. I can hardly believe I'm here sometimes. You watch other people and you listen to them and you read what they write and you hear their names and how incredible they are, what they're doing with fantasy baseball analysis or other things of that nature. And then here we are doing it together. It's so cool, man. I may sound cheesy to some people and they'll be like, well, you're just, you're putting on a front. I'm a genuine guy. I think, I put myself out there for who I am no matter what. And this is a great experience for me.
That is, at least for me, the number one quality of, what I'm looking for in everything, in just relationships. These are the type, people, the people that are genuine, that are themselves, and that are fun. Like if I'm going to be sitting here with somebody for an hour and a half and everyone's time is valuable, we're all super busy, we got stuff going on. You want to be uplifted. You want to be, be happy. And I love cheese, man. Like, so I'm all about it, so.
My kind of guy. That's who you are, Vlad. Before you go, I did one song that I did in your honor and my honor because I love him this year. And speaking of guys I'm falling more and more in love with, it would be this guy right here. So check this out real quick. This would be a cover of Duran Duran.
Oh, you ain't got to tell me, buddy.
Here we go.
He's Edwin Rios and he has the strongest hand. it's thrown, hits his bat, who can say where it will land? With Justin Turner gone, he'll shine like we know he can. When a Rios homer lands, it's across the Rio Grande.
All right.
That is the goods right there, my man.
It fits perfectly. You know, it just popped in my head one day. I'm like, oh, Edwin Rios, I love him. And Rio, perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes these things naturally come together.
Google Rios and RotoGut and see what the first tweet you see from you don't have to do it now, but
I will.
2 years ago. That was it was a Duran reference. So
okay, cool. Yeah. Hell yes, I will definitely do that. All right, so we're wrapping up the show. This is a Palazzo Podcast. Hey, it's a Rico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast. 2 L's, 2 Z's on Twitter. Palazzo Podcast at protonmail.com. Can I ask you one question before we go?
Yeah, actually, we can do the guarantees. The guarantees that you promise. You can leave the people hanging some of those questions. I'm fine to rapid fire those.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool. I was just trying to be respectful of your time.
No, I appreciate it.
Great. That'd be awesome. Okay, so here we go. Yes, it is time for your emails and community chatter. First one is, what are your expectations for JD Martinez and Jorge Soler after a subpar small sample size in 2020?
I just hope JD Martinez stays healthy, but I'm expecting maybe high 20s homers, 90 something RBIs, maybe the average dipping down, to the 250s, 260s, but usually pretty solid about where he goes. And Soler is a good value now at this point too, middle of Kansas City's lineup. 30 homers is definitely possible. I kind of like what they're doing with that lineup. It's kind of interesting how that's going to piece together.
You're not, that's starting to become a little bit of a buzz too. Matt Williams said the other day, and I like what we're seeing with the Benintendi trade. Yeah, it's a fun lineup. I agree. Also, he says, should I keep both those guys in a 12-team dynasty league, 12-team keeper league? So
I don't think. I guess you need more information to be able to make that decision. It's tough in a vacuum, but I think you could possibly let Slayer go.
Okay, Vlad, who is changing more diapers, you or the wifey?
Neither of us.
Oh, okay.
We have, grandparents and nanny. We get help. We're working around the clock, basically.
Lucky guy. What's the best strategy on batters and pitchers ratio for best ball drafts? What is the best strategy for ratios in best ball drafts?
To get ERA and WHIP, basically, probably.
I guess that's what he's saying. Yeah, no, it's kind of confusing. I'm sorry.
Well, I think best ball's points, so you're not actually getting ratios. You're just getting hammered for earned runs, and I think you get good points for for strikeouts and then for innings pitched. You're looking for I don't usually in general want to avoid the AL East if you can. Draft the best pitchers you can who just don't get bombed. I guess in a simple way to put it, because it's late. I don't know.
Sure.
Send me a message on it, and I'll be able to answer more clearly tomorrow.
Okay, that's Carlos. Thank you, Carlos. He says also, is starting pitchers the best strategy?
Is this our boy Carlos or another?
This is our boy Carlos. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I owe you an answer, man. When my mind is more clear, I promise.
There it is. Look at that. Wonderful. Okay, next one is what's the biggest aspect of your game you're working on in 2021?
Understanding. I don't know if there's one, but it's incorporating understanding of advanced metrics, because I don't want to be left behind. There are a lot of questions that I need answered all the time, just things I'm learning and trying to get better. So I think that's one thing. And most importantly, honestly, it's just avoiding my own biases. It's like not just drafting guys because I love them and because they've ruined me before and they owe me, like the Correas and the Stantons and the Garrett Hampsons of the world, I need to have a good reason for drafting them, not just because they owe me.
All right. That was from Mark Kiefer at Mark_Kiefer. Thank you, Mark.
Hey, I know Mark. I know all the audience. This is great.
That must be wonderful. What about, I bet you know this guy, Dusty Wagner. How are you addressing speed?
Why is Dusty asking me a question like that? Dusty's like one of the best players I know. He's just an NFBC rival and yet friend. Actually, he's a Houston Astros fan, and he flew out, nicest guy ever. And it's like, dude, I'll buy you get you a ticket to the World Series. If I come just crash at your place. So he flew out and we hung out, and he took me to a Dodgers Astros World Series game. It was freaking amazing. Such a good time. And I took him eat, and he's very picky eater, doesn't eat everything. I took him to Popeye's Chicken first time, and he loved it. He dug it. How do you handle speed? You want to establish some sort of a base early on. Anytime I build where I have like a Freeman or a Nato, or guys that don't get speed, I feel like I'm chasing after the Miles Straws or Roman Quinns, of the world. So a good chunk of a lot of the stolen bases are available in those early guys, the Trey Turners, Tatis, Sotos, they all steal a little bit. So you got to be really mindful as much as you can of it early on in the draft. So you're not chasing the Malik Smith type rabbits later.
Scott Jensen says, ask you about your worst drop.
Scott, I'm going to be on his podcast next week. He knows because, I talk about it or write about it. And it's because he told me not to drop him. And I did anyways. And it was Josh Donaldson in his breakout year. He told me he was going to be badass. I drafted him in the 29th round in my 12 teamer that actually almost won the overall that year. If I just kept Donaldson, I probably would have won it. He just went on to have a bananas season, and he was my 29th round pick. So I regret that one intensely.
I'm sorry, Vlad. Why do the Dodgers hate my Tony Gonsolin shares?
They hate all of our Tony Gonsolin shares, unfortunately.
I would be one of those. Yeah.
Luckily for us, that 185-ish ADP is now like 285, so it's a lot better price to buy in. He's really good, man. I know he didn't look so good in the playoffs and kind of down the stretch, but he's a legit pitcher. Things will work out somehow. He'll walk into opportunity. It's just tougher to draft someone like that. Now with the addition of Bauer there and not knowing how the rotation is going to shake out.
I'm still standing firm. I drafted him in the DC I'm doing the other day. Right around where he should be going, and I have no problems with that because I just think talent will win out, and I think he's talented. Edward J. Gillis says, how about 3 pitchers you can get in a 15-team Draft Masters format after 450 players have gone?
Yeah, that's Eddie. He's probably in my league. Eddie's actually if he's not a Hall of Famer in the NFFC, the football version, he's one of the better players there. He's a badass, comes out with his with his sons every year to draft, and pretty good baseball player as well. So I don't know, all these guys are asking me these questions they know the answers to. But I come up with Josh Fleming on the Rays, just a really, really strong ground ball guy. And I think the park works well for him. So he's somebody that I'm interested in. I put Rich Hill on this list when I saw this question, and this was before I realized he was drafted in Tampa. So now he won't be past 450 ADP. He'll now be like 350 because blisters and all. We'll take him any way he comes, especially in that park. And then I'm going to take a stab at Tony Disco. Anthony DeSclafani revives his career in San Francisco.
Oh, that's bold. I'll tell you that. Rich Hill still is unsigned. Is that correct?
I swear I just read an hour ago that he signed with the Rays.
Wow. That blows my mind. So that's like, I'm absorbing that live right now. Wow, that's huge. Wow, he's a Michigan man, by the way. So.
Yeah, pending physical.
Cool. Okay.
We didn't all get a text from Yancey on that one.
He's too busy playing with Clubhouse tonight. Trust me. What's the one mistake you see people making so far when they're posting screenshots of their drafts?
I saw that. It's it's a tough question. I don't know about mistakes. Like I'm critical of everyone's draft that isn't mine just because it's like, oh, I feel like I have the way, but maybe just like posting just for reaction. The thing is, it's never a snapshot of what somebody wants to do. It's how they're doing in that specific draft because things fall in different fashions and different ways. It's one thing if you see a notable player screenshotting the same way every time, you kind of know what you're up against when you're drafting against them. Like Toby, for example, I flip crazy. I drafted against him at the end of a 15-teamer, and I had the pick right before him. And for me, it was just a matter of like, okay, which pitcher am I going to take here? Because I know he's going to grab one. And the mistake you don't want to make, and this doesn't directly answer the question, is you don't want to let someone else's, what you know someone else is going to do, affect what you're going to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to like snipe someone like, oh, he likes Bieber, so let me get Bieber. Like, you know, sure, in like some small league, whatever. But in your, you know, you're rolling with this guy for your whole season. Your goal is to get the best players you want in your draft, not to like, you know, block someone else from getting someone, you know, that fits some sort of carnal, you know, need. You're like, oh, I got him, but did you really get him? You know?
That's a good one. With the Ahmed Rosario signing in Cleveland, are you still a fan of Oscar Mercado this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, does Ahmed play outfield now?
I don't know.
Well,
yeah, I guess utility guy. I don't know why they would think that, but maybe.
Well, I think Mercado still be pretty much the everyday center fielder, unless he, you know, really sucks against lefties. Maybe they'll platoon him with Jordan Luplow or something like that, because he smashes lefties. But you know, Rosario, I think, will probably starting shortstop. The Rosaurus guys probably know this better, but Andres Jimenez probably will start the year in the minors.
That's what they've said. Dave has been pushing that pretty hard recently.
Yeah, so I mean, Rosario probably the starting shortstop, and we'll see where Jimenez fits in. He's obviously, you know, better and more talented than him already, I think, but I don't think it affects Mercado either way. He'll be the center fielder. Maybe he's really good. He can lead off there. Never know.
Who's the one late round relief pitcher that catches your eye every time? Late round relief pitcher that catches your eye every time.
Oh man, there are a lot of them. I really sort of mix them up. I mean, it used to be Amir Garrett, but he's no longer a secret now that, you know, Lucas Sims is hurting a little bit. So he's no longer cheap. I mean, I guess I'm in the minority. Like anytime I want Adam Ottavino, I can always draft them because, you know, maybe not after today, but that is somebody that I'm into. And if it doesn't work out, it's no big deal because it's, you know, it's like pick 35, you know, round 40. So it's him. And I'm getting into a little Jake McGee. I kind of think, even though it's Gabe Kapler, and I know that he likes to troll fantasy owners, you know, obviously he doesn't do it on purpose.
Don't you love Reyes Maranta though?
Yeah, he was just coming back also from, you know, from his injury, and he's solid. I feel like of course he could, and he could mix it in, but in a draft champions format, I don't know. I think McGee is a good, just like, you know, lights out ninth inning guy, and he's closed before. He looked good, you know, last year for the Dodgers. So, but. Yeah, it throws like over 90% fastball, but yeah, he's solid.
All right, well, there it is. We tried to answer all of your questions, and I hope we were able to do that. Thanks to Vlad for being a good sport. We had a great. Oh, what about? Yeah, Carlos says, what about Mike Mayers from the Angels? There's a lot of word about him.
Yeah, we were. I think all of us were. A lot of sharp folks were loving Mike Mayers prior to the Iglesias signing. Now Iglesias is like a top 75 overall pick. He's considered one of the most solid closers. And he is like, they got him for a reason, got the job. But yeah, if it wasn't for Iglesias, Mayers would be great. If something happens to Iglesias, Mayers could be, you know, top 5 closer. He's a stud.
There it is, directly from Vlad's mouth. Well, thanks again to Vlad SEDLER for joining us. It's been a real pleasure on the Hey, it's Rico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Palazzo Podcast at ProtonMail.com. If you have any email questions, it's always 2 L's and 2 Z's. Thank you so much to Vlad. Vlad, any final words before we head out that you want people to hear from you as we close up the shop?
Not particularly. Just you know, this is obviously this has been a blast. It's really fun. I think what you have here is a fantastic thing. And again, it's because you're genuine. You're bringing good guests on. You're getting the most out of them. And just look forward to watching you continue to crush it and succeed and jump into these NFBC waters with us and crush it here as well. And just wishing everyone all the best in their drafting over the next month or so. And don't overvalue spring training and spring training at bats and news. Just kind of read between the tea leaves to make your decisions, and sign up for fantasyguru.com/MLB.
There it is. I was waiting for that.
You know.
Got to do it. This is part of the game. Thank you so much, Vlad. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the live stream. And if you're on the pod version yourself, thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time, and Godspeed.